Take it.
Okay, so I just want to thank everybody for participating today and hearing from Barbara and her staff about the CBD. This is a very important process that we're looking at. We want the input from our community, especially our neighborhood association people and people that have been talking about this. And this Barbara will educate you guys on how important this issue is and opportunities that we have to expand the map and look at all different areas of our ward. I know that we did the bridges and everybody applauds us for the efforts there. But that was never done with any CBD. That was just, and we haven't used it as opportunity, but there's an opportunity now to expand the map to help the Millville area, which also has the old Rainbow Bakery factory and the old Sears warehouse in there that we could look at doing some things with. And so I'll turn it over to Barbara or to whoever's next.
Councilman, thank you so much. Thanks for your leadership. Thanks for your service. Welcome, everybody. 90 minutes, a lot of time. You've got other ways you could have spent it. We're really grateful that you are here, caring enough to spend the time here. So we are recording the session just to ensure we don't miss anything in our note taking. Let me quickly begin by first introducing myself. My name is Poonam, P-U-N-A-M. So vowels and consonants you've not seen frequently strung together, but feel free. You cannot hurt my feelings or surprise me with any kind of mispronunciation. Let me begin by answering the why we're here. The Central Business District, which was, as you probably are aware, first adopted in 2012, was renewed by the Mayor and Council for an additional 10 years in September. This spring, we think February, March timeframe, the Mayor and Council will determine the future of that CBD, its potential expansion, and if they decide to expand it, its future boundaries. And based on that, they will develop or determine how best to use the GPLAT as a tool and process to accomplish the desired result for the CBD. Following the council's renewal of the CBD in September, they made a significant decision to undertake an energetic outreach effort to engage as broadly as possible the community in providing them input, and that's what brings us together today. So that's the why. Now let me begin to just address the how we hope to accomplish the Mayor and Council's mission of maximum community engagement throughout the process. So first, we've got 7 of these community engagement sessions. Today's the 3rd. They are now continuing on till January the 23rd. A key component of each of the community convenings will be the completion of a 9-question survey. The survey is critical because it'll provide input to the Mayor and Council. So therefore, beyond the community sessions, that survey will also be available on the city's website, both in English and Spanish. Paper copies of that survey in English and Spanish will also be available through each of the ward offices. And finally, we're going to focus, and then finally it'll be available, it'll be featured in the newspaper so that other Tucsonians who may not have heard of the community convenings have a chance to fill it out. The goal is to encourage as many residents as possible to complete the survey so the council has the benefit of hearing from as many as possible. So we need your help. So between now and the end of the month, excuse me, please tell your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues to complete the survey through whichever of those channels is most convenient for them.
Yeah.
In addition, tomorrow, hey, Mark, if I could ask you to just hit mute.
Oh, I will, Ms. Mather. I just want to tell you, the Ward 5 office, we had technical issues. The councilman is now on to be able just to do.
We've been on, Mark.
Was here.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm having technical issues. My apologies. So I will mute.
Thanks, Mark. So in addition, tomorrow, because you're attending today, you'll receive an email directly from the city, giving you an opportunity to share additional questions, comments, thoughts. Often as we process things overnight, we come up with new insights, and so we want to get all of that as well. That email will also allow you to receive updates by email as we go through this entire process. And we really invite you to indicate yes and sort of join the entire journey. Finally, on that website, the city is creating a master Q&A document. So the thinking here is that any curiosity expressed by one can benefit everybody. So we encourage you to post your questions either today or through the survey that you receive tomorrow, and then share any comments you've got because you'll see them reflected and summarized on that website. All of that will, by the end of January, we hope, result in a presentation to the Mayor and Council where they will then review the results from all 7 community convenings, from the survey, from any of the comments and questions that are received by the website, the results of academic research that they've also commissioned, and they will use all of that to inform their discussion about potential modification of the CBD boundaries and the utilization of the GPLAT process. Based on their discussion and consensus direction that will emerge from it, by the end of February, the thinking is that staff will then prepare a modified CBD boundary map and a GPLAT application and policy, so that in March, potentially the mayor and council would consider adoption of the proposed changes. So that's the how, the why, or the why and the how. So hopefully that makes sense. So for today, we've got 4 simple goals. 1, we want to level set a shared understanding of the CBD and the GPLAT so that we're all having a conversation about the same topic. 2, we've got a couple of short activities to discover what you want, that is your vision for our community's future, and the challenges that you believe we will face in getting there. 3rd, we'll focus on the CBD and the GPLAT and capture your thoughts, perspectives, desires, priorities, and fears by completing that 9-question survey together. And then finally, we'll have open discussion to ensure that we capture all of your ideas and suggestions. So hopefully that all made sense. I got a couple of just little simple agreements that I'd like us all to engage in a pinky promise to commit to each other. Vigor and brevity. 90 minutes sounds like a lot. It's not, it goes fast. So vigor and brevity as you share your ideas and your solutions would be wonderful. If you're not speaking, please hit mute so that we don't get the distraction of all the background noise. And if you're wanting to speak, there's a raised hand feature in Zoom, use that. And then the chat function will be monitored throughout. So the staff will be attempting to answer questions in real time in the chat. So feel free to use the chat. And the questions that are posed there will be summarized and then placed on that master Q&A document that'll appear on the website. So again, curiosity expressed by one, we want to make sure it benefits everybody. Finally, one special and pretty innovative feature, I think, of this community engagement process is the inclusion on the team of 3 individuals that we're calling bridge builders. And their role is to do just that, to build bridges of engagement, to get as far and broad as we can in engaging citizens and residents. All 3 of our bridge builders are rooted deep in the community. They're longtime residents, very well versed on the topics that we are talking about, which makes them uniquely qualified. And they're going to help us ensure widespread and diverse participation throughout the entire community engagement process. Ultimately, they will also assist with the preparation of recommendations to the mayor and council at the end of the process. And so to just get us going, I want to just quickly ask each of them to say hello and to introduce themselves now. So take it.
I'll start off. Hi, I'm Corky Poster. I'm an architect and planner with Poster Merton McDonald. I'm a 47-year resident of Ward 5. Proud to be there. And I have, as some of you may know, a kind of very long history in community planning and affordable housing. I've had the pleasure of building about 4,600 units of affordable housing and worked in most of the neighborhoods from the Elvira neighborhood to the south all the way to Flowing Wells to the north and most of the neighborhoods in between. Currently working on the Thrive in the 05 project, which is a large scale effort to improve a lot of the area north of Speedway and south of the cemetery. Happy to be here and pleased to be acting as kind of a third party element in the process. So thank you.
Thanks, Corky. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. Hi, my name is Sharia Jimenez. I also go by Shay, if that's easier. I'm a small business owner for Cuadro Design. I'm also a designer and a long-term resident. I was born here in Tucson. My family is from here. I've been here we've been here for 5 generations. Historically come from El Hoyo, which was my great-great-grandmother's house. Actually was destroyed in the urban renewal movements in the 60s. So I understand a lot of the fears and concerns, but I also bring the perspective of being in the architecture world, design and development world. So again, I feel like I kind of can help, just mediate. And that's really my intention here.
Beautiful. Welcome. Welcome, Shay.
Good morning. I was going to say good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. My role is that to help you. I'm going to listen, sit through these meetings. This is our third one, and my background is in micro lending, helping small businesses, working with the city, the county, the small business administration. And I want to advocate for small businesses. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
It's great. We're delighted to have you. Okay, so let's get on to today's agenda. As the council member mentioned, it's important for all of us to have a shared understanding. And so we are going to hear from the next two people who will walk us through some background on the Central Business District, the sort of the what it is and the what's been happening there up until this point. So we're going to hear from Barbara Coffey, who is the Director of Economic Initiatives, and from Corin Manning, who is the Planning Administrator at Planning and Development Services. So again, if you have any questions that come up, please put them in the chat. Take it. They're going
All
to
right,
employ vigor and brevity. Here we go.
here we go. Thank you, Poonam. We will we'll spend a few minutes. First, I wanted to just kind of bring us to that definition and take a look at our current Central Business District here in Tucson. So the map that you see with the area shaded in red is just that. And again, it represents a contiguous geographical boundary set by the local governing body. It is not more than 2.5% of the total land area of the city. It is also an area that when surveyed, we met the criteria required by state statute in order to form this district. And as Poonam mentioned, it was renewed in September by our mayor and council. So the purpose here with Arizona state statutes, the opportunity really is with the Central Business District to use a tool we call the Government Property Lease Excise Tax, or GPLET. Again, this tool helps the city to facilitate development and attract reinvestment and development in the area. And it requires that that property that's developed has to increase in value by 100% or more. And so that tool is technically the only tool right now available by state statute for a central business district. There have been 23 projects since 2012 that have received the 8-year tax abatement. So that GPLET allows the city to do an 8-year tax abatement in order to achieve that investment. If you look at pre-GPLET value totals of those 23 projects, they were on the tax rolls for about $40 million. Their estimated post-GPLET value total, when we do our economic impact analysis for each project, was well over $220 million. And when we took a look in 2020 at the tax rolls, we found that of those 23 projects, not including the 6 that had not yet completed construction, of those, we were already seeing valuations of over 90 million in total. All but 5 of those have received certificate of occupancy of those 23. All but 3 have been developed by local entities and development firms. And all but 1, I will tell you, we have an outlier that's just at 93% increase in value, entering its 4th year of the abatement period. So that's just a picture of where we are. Of those projects, it's interesting to note that 8 of those have converted parking lot properties. 5 of those have activated vacant buildings. 5 projects have been resulted in rehabilitation or preservation of historic buildings. 1 of those was developed on a vacant lot, and none of our projects have replaced a single family home. So here's just a few images that speak and kind of tell the story. When you look at this, this is a situation where a parking lot was converted into now the Trinity office building, a very eco-friendly, sustainable office environment that just opened last year and is now leasing. This, you might recall, is the former Motel 6 property, again, in quite a state of decline, turning into what opened on July 1 in the middle of a pandemic, the Tucson Hotel, a new boutique hotel for the city. This property is a site that built back in 1952, I want to say, was First Baptist Church School building and a historic property that was able to be renovated and become the home of the headquarters for Mr. Car Wash. So again, creating, turning that eyesore into an icon. Speaking of icons, we have our tallest skyscraper in Tucson, and sitting on that hard corner, which was utilized for an open space area up until the time that it could develop. And it is now the Rendezvous, which is 100 apartments, 100 luxury apartments that sit now on that corner. Unique project still allows for open space through the center. If you can envision taking a walk right from that corner through towards the office building, you would see a beautiful piece of art as well, and an open area to connect on to the next block. But you know, it's not all that great, right? We have struggled with some of the issues surrounding the GPLET program as a community. Obviously, we have been having this conversation for that very reason. It's not great when we have to deal with the language that is asked for in the state statutes regarding the meeting of the definition of slum and blight. It's an offensive term, to be honest, and it's something that we want to revisit as a community, and we need our legislators to help create some change around that. The other thing is, this is simply one program. The GPLET is one tool, and I just share this as it alone cannot create or solve all the problems, and it's certainly not creating all the problems. So just something to keep in mind, that it is one factor that impacts outcomes in this area. And then finally, affordable housing is a challenge where many, and Corky knows this best, affordable housing projects may not be able to utilize the GPLET. So take the examples of the Marist or West Point apartments. And again, other tools come into play when we're talking about creating affordability in some of our mixed use developments. So with that, I want to turn it over now to our partners in planning and development, Corinne Manning, and she can share a little bit more about a couple of other tools that have been helpful as we've seen development occur in our district. Corinne?
Thank you, Barbara, and good morning, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm. We can.
Okay, great. I'm Corinne Manning, Planning Administrator with the Department of Planning and Development Services, and I want to share a little bit more about some of the other tools that we have as a city to support infill development. As Barbara mentioned, the GPLET and the CBD is just one tool, and this tool is not meant to work in isolation to support infill development. It's actually meant to work hand in hand with other tools as a city that we have as a city. And all of this was really part of a conscious decision to focus on more sustainable transit-oriented infill development to help restore our downtown and adjacent areas. And a lot of that was catalyzed by the addition of the streetcar. After many decades of advocacy by community members and our elected officials, we were able to fund new transit in our city about a decade ago. And around that time, our city wanted to make sure that we could actually capitalize on that transportation investment by fostering more infill development in our downtown. And so tools like the GPLET and Central Business District were designed to spur that type of growth alongside zoning regulations. And zoning shapes what can actually be built on a particular site. So our city put in place zoning that would also support that type of infill development that the GPLET is designed to spur. So these work hand in hand, whereas the zoning controls what can be built, the shape, what we see on a lot. The GPLET then provides the financing, the financial mechanism to help those projects get off the ground, metaphorically speaking. So the infill incentive district is one of those zoning tools, and it's really probably one of the more commonly known. It has been used by many of the projects that also took advantage of the GPLET. So I want to just briefly touch on what the infill incentive district is and provide a few examples. So this is an optional zoning overlay that allows properties to develop more pedestrian, transit-oriented mixed-use development. That's a mouthful, so I'm going to give a couple examples of what that looks like. It requires that projects meet certain design standards and that they preserve any historic assets or historic resources on the property and don't negatively impact historic resources. This district was established in 2010. with modifications that have been made over time. So just like other tools like the GPLET, we're constantly refining so that these tools can keep up with current needs of our city. So for example, originally the infill incentive district could be used by student housing projects. It was used by projects like the district and the junction. And then there was a lot of community conversation because that really did not meet the original goals and intention of the infill incentive district. So mayor and council made some modifications at this point. To do a group dwelling or student housing project, you need a special exception from mayor and council. And since that was put in place, no student housing projects have applied for that special exception. So that's just an example of how these tools are meant to evolve with time based on the needs of our community. And that's why we're having this conversation today about the GPLET. I just want to show a map of the infill incentive district so you can see that this does closely follow the boundary of the central business districts. They are nearly identical. And the downtown infill incentive district has different sub areas that each have different design guidelines. So the design and what can be built in our downtown, for example, is different than what can be built along Stone Avenue or Cell 6 Avenue, so that it is in context with the adjacent uses. So this generally covers downtown and commercial corridors. What it doesn't cover is residential neighborhoods. It's not meant to cover those areas. Those areas are really intended for more lower density residential development. So as a result of the IID, we've seen over 40 projects approved through this zoning option, which has facilitated over 1,500 housing units, including hundreds of units of senior and affordable housing, over 500,000 square feet of new commercial space, providing jobs in office sector, retail, hotels. And I want to mention that many of these are what we call minor projects. Actually, over half of the projects have been really to support the expansion of small businesses in our downtown area. For example, Cirrus Visual, Sand Reckoner, Time Market, Presta Coffee, all of those businesses have been able to use this zoning option to stay and expand their footprint in the downtown area. So here's an example of one very prominent intersection in downtown, Stone and Broadway, what it looked like 9 years ago. There was surface parking on one corner, an office building that was starting to become a bit out of date, right next to a low-rise one-story office building. Since then, we've seen those two corners both utilize the infill incentive district to build new mixed-use development, meaning it's a mix of residential with other uses. So on the left, you see the West Point apartments, and that's a really great example of the how we're able to accomplish goals around historic preservation and adaptive reuse through the infill incentive district. So that building that you see right on the corner was preserved. That's a historic building. It was updated and rehabbed, so those offices are still in use. And then new affordable housing was built next door. That's 50 units of affordable housing for seniors. And you can see it's right on a streetcar stop. So taking advantage of that transit and really fostering more transit-oriented development where people can use the streetcar to get to work, to school, etc. On the other corner is 10 West Broadway, and you can see another mixed-use development with housing above and then offices, medical offices below. And those active uses on the ground floor also create a more inviting streetscape and pedestrian experience. Another example, more on the small business side, like I mentioned, this is a site on North Stone. It was an auto use that had gone out of business. It was vacant for some years, and then it was renovated to serve as the offices for Cirrus Visual, a local business. They were able to rehab this, do an adaptive reuse project, and stay in the downtown area and expand their offices to add new employees to their business. This project also utilized the GPLET to fund that project. So a few examples, and then as Barbara mentioned, though, these tools are constantly evolving. So another aspect of the infill incentive district that we're currently looking at is also around housing. So when mayor and council last updated and renewed or extended the infill incentive district last year in 2019, or 2 years ago now, 2019, they requested that the city conduct a housing study because the IID has facilitated a lot of affordable housing projects, but we're also seeing a lot of new market rate development. And we want to ensure that this tool continues to support a mix of incomes in our downtown area and adjacent neighborhoods. So we've been working on that housing study. There's a lot of data available online already. It's been presented to Mayor and Council, and we're continuing to work on that study. It's nearing completion, and that study will then inform some of our policies and approaches, strategies for supporting affordable and workforce housing citywide. So back to Poonam.
Right. All right. All right, Barbara, thank you very much. All right. I wanted to now zoom us out a little bit. And it's time for you to do some work. So for those of you that may not have your chat open, I encourage you to please open your chat because I'm going to ask you to answer a question in the chat. So for this activity, I really want to hear from everybody. Please write one word as an answer in the chat. And here's the question to answer. Think now about Tucson in 2030. So it's January the 12th, 2021. Let's think about a decade from now. In one word, what adjective would you like to claim as a description of our community in 2030? Or to ask it another way, what do you want to be true as a description of Tucson in 2030? And let's see what we have. And Batun, can you re-enter it to everyone? Your response was great. If you could just re-enter that so everyone sees it. And I'm going to turn to a few of you, just have you share a little bit more about what it was that you meant. So let me start with Jermaine, who was the first one. It took you no time at all. You immediately said innovative. So give us a sense of what that means to you. Jermaine Miller, where are you? All right. I'm not sure what happened to Jermaine. So Abby, let me turn to you. Give us a sense of what you mean when you say well-rounded.
Hi, everybody. My name is Abby Charles. This year, I get the wonderful chance to serve Tucson as Miss Tucson. I'm so happy to be here today. So when I say well-rounded, I think it means having something in our community that everybody can call a piece of their home, whether it is the people in the community, the buildings, something that when they reminisce on what Tucson means to them, they have something that they can share to outsiders and really be citizens that share to the global community how wonderful our city can be.
Great. That's great. So Abby, what I also heard was sort of that there's something that benefits everybody. Everyone gets to be a part of everybody. So it's great. Okay. Stability. Sarah, let me turn to you and just give us a little bit more about what stability represents.
Here a long time. Okay, just speak.
Stability in terms of not displacing long-term residents.
Got it. So displacement. So you don't want to see displacement.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Carrie, vibrant is such an awesome word. Share a little bit what you mean by vibrant.
I think for me, it pertains a lot to the arts and culture, the food, just highlighting what exists currently within our community so that all development highlights the vibrancy of Tucson, and it just kind of becomes in my brain like a nationwide thing. You go to Tucson because of the culture, the art, the people, vibrancy in our policy, life-giving policies, life-giving nonprofit work.
Beautiful. So vibrancy in all the dimensions that are extraordinary about Tucson. Gorgeous. Okay. Do we have a, Barbara, you almost ready?
We are taking extra time apparently, so I'm
Okay.
waiting on it.
Wilda, I'm going to turn to you. Environmentally innovative. Give us a little bit more about what that means to you.
Yes, I thank you very much. I'm entering the small scale developer arena, and I'm very concerned about sustainability in terms of protecting our environment and being culturally conscious at the same time. And so there's a lot of innovation going on with regards to construction. And if we could combine the building of doing the infill using innovation that is affordable, that would be something that we could make available to folks who need affordable housing. If we just bring all of the players together to strategize how we can make innovation more affordable so that we can have the sustainability we need in the buildings that we build, thinking about the people we're building them for and caring about the people we're building them for and making them affordable. That's my goal as a small developer, not only of affordable housing, but a mixed use approach. And we do have neighborhoods in Tucson like that. And I'm working with one of the barrios regarding this, as well as with the city manager. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Thank you.
Thank you. So you can take a look here. The larger the word, the more it was observed by the 58 of us in this conversation, right? And so just to give you, so you'll see, this is an extraordinary place in 2030, innovative, vibrant, equitable, thriving. I mean, these are gorgeous words. So thank you. I want to move there in 2030. Please keep that promise. Now, the next question is same thing. Use the chat, one word, put your answer in there. In a single word though, what do you think is the biggest challenge that we as a community will face in achieving that amazing and beautiful vision that we just articulated? What are going to be the hurdles? What are the issues that we will have to manage through? What are the challenges going to be? What's the single biggest challenge that you see? This is great. So, Carrie, I'm going to turn to you. Retaining talent. Tell us what you mean by that. What does that challenge look like?
I'm a self-proclaimed millennial. I think a lot of my talented friends, I'm going to mute this 1 second, sorry. A lot of friends often leave for other cities. And so I find just in my generation and my age group, keeping some really talented individuals here in Tucson just remains challenging for different reasons. And I think we often lose some of our greatest assets and future leaders to other cities.
And our next generation of thinkers and innovators. Yeah, I get it. Thank you. Pat, I want to turn to you. Collaboration. Describe how that gets in our way potentially of the challenge, or how we need to manage or rise to meet that challenge.
Yeah, hi, thanks. For me, I'm the managing partner of 4D Properties. We have mostly retail, but we do other types of development as well. And I really do believe in what everyone else has said as well. Sustainability is key, affordability is key. But one of the things that we have to always think about too is the economic development standpoint and how we bring more jobs to Tucson and how we bring more people that want to move here. And that's why the word that I used to describe it was magnetic. I want Tucson to be a town where everyone wants to come. Some people come for the art, some people come for the music, some people come because it's more affordable than California, some people come for jobs. And I think that what we're talking about here today and the GPLET and the CBD, the key that we're looking for here for everyone, every voice that is spoken today, they all benefit when we have more jobs and we have more people moving to Tucson, and we are able to take care of them and settle them into the lifestyle that they're looking for. And so the collaboration to me is going to be a key challenge because we have so many different voices. But I think that with the right leadership that we clearly have on this call, and I'm so impressed by the people that work in the city of Tucson with all of these different programs and what's happened so far, it's incredible. But the collaboration is where we have to really focus on so that we hear all these voices and we find a win-win-win for everybody involved. Over.
Yeah, really well said. These are difficult and complex and multi-layered kinds of issues, and often they require of us some pretty profound discussions and courageous conversations around trade-offs, right? And so here it is. So here are the things that could get in our way. NIMBYism, fear, greed, austerity. And again, this is true of the 58 of us that right now in this moment are having this discussion. And this is the kind of stuff that if we say we are eyes wide open, we have a vision that's compelling, and it includes all of us, and we're going to do our level best to collaborate and stay in communication to sort of solve through and have courageous conversations through it. There's no reason in the world that a decade from now, you can't be delivering that promise of that place that we envision. So thank you for that. Okay, now we're going to stroll through the 9-question survey. So in this instance, you don't have to use the chat because the survey instrument allows you to answer directly on the screen. So here's what we're going to do. We'll have a test question. Let's just run the test question so you can see. So you'll see the question, please answer it now. When you pick an answer, then the red submit button will light up. Hit red submit, it's that easy. So this is not a trick question, it's a test question, but let's answer it. And then immediately we will see there, like, look at that, where there's both complete consensus and it is good news that everyone is breathing. So here's how it's going to go. We've got a remaining 8 questions. Most of them are pretty straightforward, so we'll go quickly through them. There are a few where we want to just probe a little bit more. We've got some curiosity about why you answered with the kinds of answers. So here is the second question. How long have you lived in Tucson? Wow, it's probably one of you that have been here less than a year, but holy moly, there's some deep roots. So no wonder you are caring enough to commit 90 minutes in the middle of a work day to be here. So thank you. Let's go to the next question. Do you live within the existing CBD? Very few of you do, most of you do not, and one of you isn't quite sure, but if you want to send the city your address later, they can confirm it for you. How about that? Moving on to the next question, please. What brings you to the CBD or to downtown Tucson? And please, yeah, you can select more than one. There you go. You've got a bunch of good reasons. So there's 4 that sort of stand out, or actually 5. Visiting restaurants, government facilities, shopping districts, entertainment, murals, which actually speaks to the vision Tucsonians, and you included, respond to the vibrant diversity of offerings. So thank you. Next question, please. The streetcar's influence on downtown Tucson has been, in your view, very positive is the number one answer. And if I add up somewhat positive and very positive, that's more than half of you. All right, next question, please. And on this one, we want to have a little discussion, I think. Here it is. City Council has identified affordable and workforce housing as a key priority. They've already said that. Which statement best reflects your opinion of that conclusion? Wow, so there's some significant, so Councilmember Fimbres, clearly you're getting a lot of thumbs ups from your community and your citizens about that priority. Corky, do you want to explore this one a little bit more?
Yeah, this is Corky Poster. As I said earlier, I'm an architect and planner, and I've done a lot of affordable housing, and we've got a lot of smart people on the call today. So I wanted to get some additional suggestions and feedback and thoughts about how we can implement the notion that everyone clearly strongly agrees with, and that is how to develop some additional affordable housing. Just to clarify a couple of things, it was said earlier that the low-income housing tax credit program cannot use the GPLET. They're not prohibited from using that by the GPLET. The problem is technical and structural. 98% of the affordable housing being built in the United States right now comes through the low-income housing tax credit program, but they use a financial structure that requires the investors to own the property for 15 years. The GPLET requires the city of Tucson to own the property for 8 years. And so that's a direct contradiction. We've had attorneys look closely at using the GPLET for affordable housing, and it's just structurally not possible. Also, Corin mentioned the affordable housing in the IID. My last count was that there are 5 projects that have been built using the IID, adding up to in excess of 500 new units of affordable housing in that IID Central Business District footprint. And then finally, and this should be in the back of everyone's mind, there's a big choice neighborhood program going on for all of the area, mostly in the CBD north of Speedway. And in that program, we intend to rehabilitate the Tucson House for continue to be used for low-income seniors and build another 600 units of affordable housing in that district. But I know that doesn't cover everything. So I'm real interested in hearing more from folks about their ideas on how we might do other kinds of affordable housing. So just unmute and speak up. You don't need to use the chat.
Hi, this is Earl O'Neill. One of the concepts of affordable housing is to allow residents that have lived in their houses for multi-generations to be able, with stable, low taxes, to stay in their houses. In other words, to keep their housing affordable by not raising the property taxes due to development nearby.
That's a great comment. Thank you. Others?
Also, I believe that has already happened, right? Hasn't there been a protection put in place now that homeowners can stop their rent?
Yeah, that's true, Sheree. It's but it also involves a lien on the property, and to my knowledge, no one has ever used that because of the lien on the property.
I think there's also a big difference between technically affordable housing and really what most people are concerned about, or many, which is workforce housing. Housing that people can afford in their neighborhoods, given Tucson incomes, because I think that there are mechanisms to do technically affordable housing, but there aren't a lot of mechanisms available for more workforce housing. And so Corky, it'd be interesting to understand how the GPLET can overlap with that and perhaps other programs. In addition, I've been following a lot of affordable housing updates recently, and there's hope that with the new administration, there'll be more federal funding available that might be able to be used in different ways.
We would hope so. Thank you. Other comments?
So this is actually.
Yeah, hi, this is Pat DeConcini.
Go, Pat. Go ahead, Pat.
Okay, I was just going to ask, it seems to me that we really need to make the modifications necessary to the GPLET so that they can be used for affordable housing. That's step number one. We just need to change that so that's not a barrier anymore. I know that's easier said than done, but I would certainly focus energies on that. That seems like a good strategic thing that we could put into place that would help us 10 years from now. And then number two, I was wondering if it's possible if you were to do a mixed use development and you could somehow do a split title ownership. So if you put in 50 units of normal housing and you put in 10 units of low income housing, could you split the title, the ownership of those 10 units as a way of helping us get around these rules and regulations that aren't allowing us to do what we really need to do? Over.
Patrick, that's a great idea. And in fact, that is possible. There were a couple of projects floated a while back, one on block 175 across from El Charro, but that project never continued. But that's a great idea. That's the only way under current rules to be able to use the GPLET and the low-income housing tax credit at the same time.
Great. Listen, this is, wow, really impressive. It's impossible to know where the next solution is going to come from. And so the only way that we can, as communities, benefit from best thinking is to all offer our individual ideas. And often it takes the germ or a stiff idea that then, when discussed and bandied about by others, evolves into a meaningful solution. So thank you. Keep that going. And now, if it's okay, I'm going to go to the next question just to keep us on track. So in addition to affordable workforce housing, what other types of investments would you believe, or would you suggest to the mayor and council that they keep as a significant priority? And this one, please scroll down, because there's another couple of questions that you need to scroll down, or answers. Only when you scroll down can you see. So really the good news is that their number one priority, that is affordable and workforce housing, you solidly and strongly agree with that priority. Now the question is, what are the second, third, and fourth things that they should focus on? Because as a practical matter, it is really, really tough to be excellent at all things. And so we're better served in our lives if we sort of go hard and in a focused fashion after a few. So let's see what you say. Okay, so renovation and reuse of existing buildings, safer streets and better connectivity, and public green spaces. So I'm going to turn to Shane Frank. Is there any curiosity that comes up for you as you look at this?
Not at the moment. I'm good.
Shay?
No, I'm good as well. Thank you.
Okay, then let's go to the next question, please. And this has to do with the geography. What areas around the downtown should the city the mayor and council focus on for investment? All right, so based on now 53 of us in a conversation on January 12th, here is the answer. So there's a few that sort of are pretty close. South 6th Avenue, 5 Points, Miracle Mile, the 05, followed pretty closely by the I-10 frontage. Okay, thank you. And then the last question, which I know we want to talk to you more about once we get the answers up. So let's get the question up. What types of community benefits should accompany GPLED assisted development projects in the CBD? It is a tool. So how do you want to use that tool? What are the benefits that are the most important for you? So there's 3 above all others: small and local business job creation, environmental sustainability, historic preservation, and adaptive reuse. Shay, I see you're about to say something. Were you?
Yeah, I just wanted to call on Colette to explain more about some of the comments she's made.
Colette, you've been energetic in the chat. You've got some, share with us what you're thinking.
Out of a book written by a ASU instructor. It's all about Phoenix downtown development. And essentially what he is saying is because these GPLETs are so expensive that you have to have a lot of capital to begin with. So it's very difficult for a very small individual financially to be able to utilize these tools. The other thing I have a real concern on is that when the city originally passed the GPLETs, they never did the statutory requirement for creating the redevelopment area plan. And without that statutory requirement being fulfilled, it calls into question everything the city has done since then.
Okay, so Colette, I want to focus on the first half of what you said. So it's about ensuring that there's opportunity, but if I heard you correctly, for small businesses as well, right? So am I correct in saying that, in assuming that you also enthusiastically answered that small and local business job creation was your highest priority for the community benefits? That be correct?
The problem with community benefits agreements, if that's what we're discussing, is that they are a private contractual arrangement, which means you better have money. You better have money to be able to hire an attorney. You better have money to be able to take it to court if it's violated. And asking a neighborhood which has very little to no money to go up against a developer who has access to those kinds of resources makes them kind of a non-starter. Unless the city is willing to fund that element, that legal element for neighborhoods and then enforce it, you're kind of dead in the water if you're a neighborhood.
So in terms of input to the mayor and council, would your input be that they ought to consider funding the legal component of what a small business would need? Is that the solution?
That's one of the solutions, is that it's the whole idea of parity. You can't have parity if you show up at a meeting and you aren't armed and the guy on the other side of the table is.
Yeah,
And
no,
bringing in your experts
I think-
means you're armed.
Right, Colette, I think we agree. The question becomes so what's the solution, right? And so
One
I'm
of the solutions is that the city has to make that commitment to level the playing field. It
Right.
has to recognize that neighborhoods, small businesses, we don't have those resources.
Got it. And then Frankie, I'm going to turn to you because you have extensive experience sort of advocating on behalf of and ensuring provision of opportunity for small businesses. Chime in here.
Sure. And thank you, Colette, for your, you have a really good point. The initial investment for the GPLET, it is high, and local businesses, hardly have that kind of investment. So my question would be, if we're trying to protect small businesses, we're trying to make it possible for legacy businesses to use this financial resource, what kind of ideas, suggestions do you all have? Because at the end of the meetings, our job is to make recommendations to the city. So I would like to hear solutions. How can we make this work in the benefit of the small businesses to make sure they qualified and we maximizing the resources of this financial tool, the GPLET. So I honestly want to hear, I'm going to take notes. And Colette, if you have something in mind, please feel free to, bring it up.
And I would also say to any of you who answered, because that was your number one, right?
73%
Exactly.
stated, yes.
3/4 of us feel very strongly about this. And so please express, please share the what ifs, what could we do? Like what kinds of ideas and solutions do we have?
I would really like to see funding distributed to the Toole Avenue Arts District, and the Toole Avenue Arts District is solely represented in Tucson. Yet we are the ones who historically and traditionally have brought so much arts and culture to this town. And it's really important that some of this funding is distributed to the Toole Avenue Arts District so that we can not only remain a vital part of this community, but we can improve our buildings, which our buildings are historic 100-year-old buildings that are falling in disrepair, and we don't have funding to restore our buildings. And so I feel like it's really important, if we want to see people be drawn to this town because of the arts, then we have to support the arts. And not only think about affordable housing for small businesses, but affordable housing or for people, but affordable housing for the artists. Because we've been pushed out of downtown. We used to have spaces, and then now it is gentrified, and it's very hard. And the ones that are holding on, we're holding on for dear life over here with no help from the city.
Great, Brenna, thank you. Any other ideas? Solutions, suggestions, ideas?
Yes, I would suggest that we revisit the code, because what I'm seeing showing up in some of the minutes is that some of these businesses that are downtown are asking for relief from the parking requirements or attaining parking spots so that they can actually get a client to rent the building. So if we pave over every parking lot, we can be inadvertently hurting some of these businesses.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Can I just add that when businesses or developers do that, there's a parking study involved. Like from a big picture standpoint, the reason that the GPLET is even in place is because the city looked at what was holding us back and what was contributing to our extraordinarily high level of poverty here. So from an economic development standpoint, the poor shape that our downtown was in is what was one of the big contributors and the biggest barrier to businesses growing here, young people staying here, and businesses moving here. So I just don't want there to be misinformation about when within the IID downtown, you can get your parking mitigated, even though some people still need some of that. That is how you develop effectively a downtown, and that's not a negative.
That's great. Thank you, Randy.
This is Terry. One of the other, as we talk about the CBD, as the tool, one of the things I hear a lot from small local businesses is really trying to keep rent affordable. And as we work on that as a tool, one of the, I think, opportunities that we have is to ask, because the CBD is an incentive for property owners and developers, right? It's not a direct incentive for local business unless they own the property because of the way that mechanism works. But when you're working with a developer or a property owner who's going to turn around and rent, having discussions about keeping certain opportunities at a lower rent, I think could directly benefit some of the smaller businesses in the future.
That's great. Thank you, Carrie. This is rich stuff, people. What else? Any other ideas?
I'd like to add something. This is Awilda. Thank you. I'd like to recommend that you take a look at the local contractors that you have who have been squeezed out of this whole industry because we're just that. Don't have connections like the larger contractors. And perhaps the larger contractors can be encouraged to work more with local contractors, number one, and maybe just look at what local contractors you do have that are being squeezed out, because that would increase jobs for those folks so they could take care of their families too. That's all I have to add. Thanks.
So, Wilda, is that because local contractors aren't aware of the opportunity or don't know how to access learning more about how to seize the opportunity? Just give me a sense of where that breakdown is in your mind.
I would say all of the above. I would say it's partly they're not aware and don't know where to get the information, but also they just, they can't compete because they need money to get started on some of these projects.
I understand. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, this is Pat. On the local contractor front, I think something that possibly could be done to help some of the small local contractors is that the city could incentivize permitting and, of course, approval of GPLET projects by requiring a certain amount of use of local contractors, or at least outreach and proof that they tried to do that. And, maybe the local contractors weren't able to do it because they just don't have the steel manufacturing or whatever it might be. But the city could incentivize developers to make a stronger effort to incorporate the smaller local contractors. Over.
Yeah, no, great point. And I can see Frankie just copiously taking notes, which is great.
These are great ideas. Thank you. Do we have a business owner from one of the areas? I would like to hear from one of a small business owner. Thank you, Randy. I hear your opinion and I agree with you, but I want to hear from the smaller legacy local business.
I'm a small business owner. I own my business. I have 12 employees. I'm also a longtime Tucson resident. I was born and raised here. And so as a small business owner, I will tell you that, especially in the downtown, I'm off of Stone and Broadway. So I'm Stone and Toole. I'm in the heart of the central business district. The problems here are numerous. We don't have funding. We don't have parking. We don't have a building updates. Our 100-year-old building doesn't have, there's a lot that needs to happen. And not only just with this business, but our whole Toole Avenue Artists block here that we're trying to keep for downtown. And we don't want to be gentrified. We don't want to be kicked pushed out. It's really important that we stay and that we're a holdout here. We need access to capital. We need it. Without it, literally, and we're sitting here watching all of this funding be allocated to big business. And we're here, we've been doing this art. We've been creating the culture here in Tucson our whole lives. And we have been doing it with no funding.
Thank you, Brenna. I just want to add that we just finished disbursing $9 million in help to the small businesses and rental and utility assistance. We received over 1,000 applications. So I saw firsthand how devastated the pandemic was. So I feel your pain, and I don't, 9 million was a lot of money, but I think we can continue to work closely to ensure these resources are friendly to the small businesses.
Great, thank you. Bren, any other ideas here to share? Otherwise, I do want to, I'm just looking in the chat. So Ryan, I want to just engage with you for a minute, if you don't mind. Just share with us, you've got some pretty strong views being expressed in the chat, so I just want to give you a chance to surface them and engage us all in the discussion. Ryan?
Sure. Yeah. At the risk of entirely derailing this meeting, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Thank you.
And I've attended the first 3 of these now, and yes, I think a lot of the people on the call know that I was involved in some of the pushback on behalf of some of the organizations I work with against the CBD expansion, and really the entire philosophy around the GPLET, especially in this time of COVID. And I just wanted to say on behalf of some of the community members, I'm not alone in that thinking. Obviously, that's part of what got us to these conversations even taking place.
Yeah.
It's really that demand from community. And rather than having the discussion, I understand we can't just keep going around in circles forever. But I think a large part of the community's frustration was exactly kind of what I'm trying to say here, which is the validity of this sort of incentivization program itself as a policy, and that doesn't really seem to be the way that these meetings have been structured. And I'm concerned in that, because the data that we take from these surveys, while does provide some really, I think some great conversation has happened out of this, I don't see any change of outcome because of these questions.
Ryan, I hear you.
The type of things being asked aren't going to change the community concerns that got us here.
Right, fair point. So, and here's the hard part, right? Is that this is not science. This is art, right? Community is not science. Community is art. And so here's the challenge: is we have what we have, and you may not like that we have it, but we have what we have. So the question becomes, what can we do to make it better, right? And so what I would encourage is to bring forth specific solutions. Like, what are the ideas? Because there isn't a preset foregone conclusion that the mayor and council have. They genuinely want to hear. And these are complicated issues that are sort of a landscape filled with trade-offs. And so at some point as communities, we got to talk about it. I mean, I go through it every day when I look at a grape next to an M&M. I go through a very complicated set of trade-off discussions in my own head before I make the decision for which one I'm going to reach for. And so I want to encourage you to bring the ideas and to engage in conversation, because it is easy to be disgruntled, but that doesn't solve anything for any of us, right?
Yeah, I want to really say, and to your point, I think Brenna spoke up loudly and clearly. Community investment, direct community investment, as opposed to incentivizing, corporate development from money that would otherwise be used for public good. We're using tax revenue, potential tax revenue to incentivize future growth. And it's at a time when those revenues are strapped and we're facing real serious austerity as a city and as a community. So it's taking away even more so. And we have now quite a history of what GPLET has provided our community so far. And I feel like we're not appropriately looking in the very recent rearview mirror as to where we are. So, but I appreciate what you said.
Great. Corky,
Well,
were you about
this
to
is
say
this,
something?
yeah, this is Corky.
Yeah.
I want to remind everyone on the call that the bridge builders, Frankie and Sharia and I, have been empowered to write a report to the mayor and council based on what folks have been saying in these first 3 meetings and the next 4 meetings. So your comments are certainly not falling on deaf ears, nor are they preordained solutions coming from staff. We're listening carefully, and our job is to make recommendations, which might be very different than the current structure and status of the GPLET. Sharia, do you want to join me on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm myself just trying to, pull apart all these very complex overlaps. I mean, again, there's, the GPLET, the CBD, the IID. There's what we can do here at a local level, and then there's what we can do, at a state level. And again, I'm totally with you, everyone in spirit, in a lot of the resentments and frustrations. I completely understand. I hear everyone. But again, I think there's also, this perception that there's just money being handed out. And that isn't also true. What these programs all are is tax abatement. So there's no money that's being given out. It's money that's being deferred, right? So again, I understand the layers and the complexity and yes, agree that we do need more direct aid and assistance. And for small businesses, and one of the ways, again, I think about myself also as a small business owner, one of the ways I could potentially see that happening is just the administrative support. If we could get one of the nonprofits or somebody who's really interested in this issue to commit, a staff person to help someone fill out the forms, it could be something that simple, and those are, I think, the kinds of solutions we want to focus on, is how can we get people the real help that they need in real time, and I think that's what the kind of discussion we're trying to open up. And then also to clarify wherever there is maybe a misunderstanding on either side, on all of our parts, right? Because no one person holds all the information or every possible solution. I mean, that's impossible, but that's why we go through this process, is to hear everyone out, to respectfully hear everyone out. And again, I'm really just trying to listen and take it all in, because I don't have the solutions either. That's what we're here to do, but I do think when it comes, and again, I am totally with you all, that I think that, the language about slum and blight is really offensive. I also question some of the validity of these things, but I think that some of that is a higher level, again, kind of outside the scope of what we can even do here in the GPLET. And also for me as a Southside resident, I also am questioning, well, how can we get, at this point, I don't see either also downtown as a slum and in a state of slum and blight, so how do we potentially get these resources to other parts of town which really need it, which is, like, to me, in my opinion, is just the south and west sides, so again, these are the kinds of things I think, without getting too much in the weeds, I think we want to hear from more people.
Yeah, so I want to call on Steve, who has been active in the chat, and it's a slightly different perspective. So Steve, I encourage you to just share your view with us, please. And then I just want to turn to those of you that have had thoughts but haven't unmute to say anything. I want to make sure that we give you, everyone that we haven't heard from, an opportunity to wade in as well. So, Steve.
So Steve Albert, correct?
Steve Albert.
I'm sure there's a lot of people on the call, couldn't see all the names. No, my comment was just with regard to a sensitivity that everyone's comments regarding the local residents, the sustainability of affordable housing, supporting businesses regardless of size, those are all paramount. Those go without question. But big business isn't a villain. In instances in which a developer, as an example, is proposing, I have no development in mind specifically, but proposing developments that reflect the direction or trends taking place in today's. So for example, one of the questions that you submitted to the group asked what would the participants of this phone call like to see happen, or who would you like to see benefit in the result of a GPLET? We're seeing, for example, industrial development during a pandemic to be a paramount direction for developers to give consideration to for well-sited locations that are underrepresented with that type of development. It's not just housing and businesses, it's also a reflection in developers' direction that focuses on what's down the road. Any kind of successful development has the possibility of introducing additional jobs into the local arena, and a variety of different jobs, not just all blue collar, all levels. It just depends on the development and the success of that development. So my comments are simply acknowledging the validity of all of the comments I've heard so far today, but as a business owner, recognizing that you can't stifle future development in lieu of just one sector of the local populace without giving consideration to what's down the road and how that could influence Tucson.
Yeah, and ideally, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, so I want to now turn to some of you who are feeling a little bit intimidated that you may not know as much about the details or have the expertise on the topic, but you know what? Members of the community, you have a perspective, and I want to encourage you to come out. So even if you weren't sure exactly what GPLET stood for, you've heard enough of the conversation to have a view. So I really encourage you to share with us. So like Mary Gresham, I'm looking at you. You've been listening and fully engaged the whole time. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? What do you have to say? Oh, unmute, please, because it's going to sound so much better. There you are.
Right off the top of my head, I would say just these terms, blight and what was the other one?
Slum and blight.
What?
Slum and blight.
Slum and blight. Yeah, I got in on a previous discussion just listening to it. And that creates such a negative thing. And it sounds like that wasn't necessarily the intention. And so whoever suggested that maybe these terms could be changed to reflect what you're really looking for, I think that would be one element to address. And the last speaker who addressed other parts of town other than downtown, I'm delighted that downtown is so well now. Because I in the 60s when it was downtown, and then all those transitions. So downtown is a delight. It would be nice to have these projects going to other areas if that's possible.
That's great. That's great. And I don't know much about the details, but I do think that the slum blight is a source of annoyance and offense for most of us, and it requires a legislative solution because that's where that language is embedded. So maybe, Mary, think about signing up for the committee to maybe take that on as a group of citizens, because that's how we, the people, show up and work, right? Yeah, thank you, Mary. That was wonderful. Anybody else? Anyone else that we haven't heard from who may not feel like they've got the expertise on the topic, but they have a view? And it's the view we want to hear, the perspective we want to hear.
Can I say something?
Of course.
Hi, I'm Melissa, but I usually go by Mimi. I know a number of you see smiling faces. So I'm a native Tucsonan, small business owner, and I'm also on the IDA, the Industrial Development Authority Board, which I had no idea what it was, what it did before I got on it. Still trying to figure it out. But part of my, listening to some of the comments about how do we get, like from Brenna, how do we get access to capital? Some of these, at least in my mind, one avenue that might help is sort of collaboratively using our resources to inform the public, small business owners, regular people, of what resources are there, not just from the city, but from the IDA, that we have not a lot of capital, but we have some capital and we want to use it, and we want to use it for these types of projects. And we struggle with how do we get affordable housing? How do we make this work for people such as myself, who are more task-oriented than perhaps large, big picture thinker, but I want to be involved and I'm not quite sure how. And so one thought is there a way through the city to come up with PSAs or other ways to get all of our resources in Tucson, from nonprofits, small business owners, the city, IDA, other, Rio Nuevo, other groups out there that each play a small part that can come together so other small business owners know what resources are available. Because I think we do have a lot of resources, but a lot of us are like, as Shay eloquently said, there isn't one person that knows every little piece. And so if there can be a way to harness access to those places and get that information out to the people, we can start using the resources we have and then doing more things like this in creating other resources and other opportunities.
So
over.
Melissa, no, two things. One, you may have to redefine your view of yourself as a non-visionary, because that was really visionary, by the way. You refer to yourself as task-oriented. Here's what I've seen in other communities is that nothing stops. Collaboration is the name of the game, right? When we do things together, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. Communities are about going far. We want to go the distance so that no one gets left behind. They become exactly what we want them to be. And so there's always in every community, the two or three, it's about leadership, the two or three groups that say, on our watch, we will be better. And they get with each other and they say, how can we have joint luncheons? How can we have joint briefings, joint things so that the small business community, for example, can have access to information, which is power, right? Support. There's nothing that prevents us from doing that. That's not a government should take care of it, because we, the people, are in a better position because we're part of that network. And you know, we are 55 people sitting in one conversation on January 12th, 2021, talking about the future, but we all know hundreds of other people. And so we've got a superpower as individual citizens as well, right? To advance, to promote collaboration, to set the example in doing that. And those kinds of things go a long way. They go a long way because as your mayor and council are really authentically going through a process to try to hear from everybody, these are, as we've just discovered, really complicated issues. And they don't have a, here is what we are going to do. They genuinely want to hear from folks. And so to the extent that you can inspire others to participate and express their voice, to collaborate, to get word of what's going on out to folks, that is just net big gain for the community as a whole. Okay, is there anybody, so I'm looking at the time, we've got 5 minutes. So is there anyone who, if they didn't get a chance to speak, would be like bummed out for the rest of the day? Because I don't want to do that to you. So is there anyone that's got a burning desire to say something? Do not want to deny you that. Otherwise, although our 90 minutes ends, communication does not end. Provision of input and ideas does not end. And so let me bring to a close our 90 minutes and do that by reminding you what the channels that remain open to keep this hopefully going. So,
excuse me, may I speak?
Of course, of course.
Hi, my name is Roxana. I live and work in Ward 5. And when our neighborhood found out that the area that we reside in was going to be part of the CBD expansion, we were really bummed out because our barrios need services. We need funding for schools, we need job trainings, we need other resources and investments so that our existing neighborhood, our residents, can continue to thrive and want to stay in Tucson. So like Ryan said, you know, the CBDs and the GPLEX right now, those incentives are not working, especially amid the pandemic. So we're looking for developers and the city to look at other ways to do business and start investing in the people that reside here so that we're not looking for opportunities other places. That's all I have to say.
Great. Roxanne, let me just clarify that. Are you saying that nothing but the CBD and GPLEX have worked, therefore get rid of it? Is that your suggestion and replace it with something entirely new? Or are you saying that they've worked to create results, but just not the results that mean the most to you?
I think that we should be looking at other opportunities, and I don't think that the GPLEX are planning out anymore. They helped, like you said, to develop at some point, but now we need to start looking at different ways. So I think that we need to get rid of them altogether.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, so we've got now 2 minutes, so I'm going to go really fast. So what happens next? Tomorrow, you'll receive an email that will give you an opportunity to take any additional questions or comments, solutions, ideas that reveal for you overnight. Please share them. Remember, they will be summarized and included in that master community Q&A document that will ultimately be shared with the mayor and the council. When you get that email, the second component is it'll ask you if you will please, if you want to receive email updates, you know, stay with the journey. This is a journey. It's going to be a long time. It's not a come in for 90 minutes, have a conversation and call it done. And I can tell how deeply you all care. So please indicate and stick with it so we can all stay in the community minivan as we journey together. And then finally, please tell your friends and neighbors, colleagues, associates, fill out that survey. Again, it's accessible on the city's website in English and Spanish. There'll be PDFs that'll be available for printing out tomorrow. The ward offices have it. It will run in the major daily paper. The key is to get as many engaged as possible. I think far too many residents and citizens care deeply about our community, but are so busy, especially in the middle of a deadly pandemic, trying to just stay afloat in their own lives, that they just don't think it matters, and so they don't say anything. This really matters. The mayor and council are deeply committed to hearing from as many as possible. So to the extent that you can encourage, inspire people within your circle of influence to participate, that would be really beneficial. And we got 1 minute left. And so I want to just say thank you. It is an extraordinary thing when we come together and in a really civil way, talk about things. Doesn't mean we have to agree, and we didn't. Doesn't mean we all have to be of the same intention or conclusion, and we weren't. But here's what makes it work, is when we can stay in conversation together and not sort of cut and run or end up screaming as a response, because that never, I mean, as a parent, none of those things have ever worked for me. I know that firsthand. So the final, I want to give you the last word. Go back to your chat, open up your chats. I also believe that all of us have a very unique and spectacular contribution to make to the world. And as we go through this journey, and as we go through it, hopefully together, to get to whatever it's going to be at the other end, in one word, what is that gift that you possess that is going to be your contribution in making this all work? What is it that you're going to contribute as we go through the journey as a community? What is that contribution that you're going to make? One word. Well, let's just see what we've got. Faith, creativity. Look at this. Tenacity, showing up, vision, connectivity, justice, beautiful. Reason. Oh, thank you. We need that. Energy, connector, honesty, perseverance, passion, grit. Passion, justice, beautiful. So the work is hard, the work is complicated, the challenges are real, but it's super important to have a North Star that guides us and a spirit of we're gonna not cut and run, we're gonna not leave anybody behind, and we're gonna solve these things, as complicated as they might be, we're gonna solve them because the community is worth it, and so is our future. So just thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. And Don said it, last thing, you bring in sincerity. So that's a lovely thing. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here.